sex is a whole lived experience. And that's often the way that I like to work, in looking at, yes, sex can be seen as a physical act of naked bodies or a body coming together, but it's so much more than that.
Hi guys, this podcast explores the importance of our connection, well-being and mental health. To reason with someone is to motivate them to do or accept topics, ideas and issues through discussion and having conversations. This podcast is for those that want to raise their awareness, change their perspective or just have a good time. My vision is to help people find reason to live, to grow and to understand. I do that through this podcast as well as counselling individuals that want to help themselves.
No, he needs to know.
I just think he's gonna talk and it's gonna make a lot of sense.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
One man, one podcast. 3, 2, 1. Reason With Me podcast, episode 7.
It's time!
Welcome back. Another episode today. I am super excited about this one. It is another interview. If you haven't picked up already, season 2 is all about interviews. I'm trying to interview innovative and out there people that are working in some really awesome fields and working in some really important stuff, and then asking them how that relates back to our connection, our mental health, and our well-being. Now, I'm pretty intimidated by today's guest, and maybe I'm more intimidated by the topic. The topic is something we always talk about. It's always reflected on. It's always in the back of a lot of people's minds. Yet there's still this stigma and this awkwardness and this like, ooh factor. So I wonder if you've picked up what it is we might be talking about today, but I would like to introduce the first woman of the podcast today. I am honoured to introduce Georgia. Georgia is a certified Australian sex coach. She applies a client-centred approach in supporting individuals, couples and groups to become more aware of their bodies, their sex and their sexuality. Georgia develops online and tech-based programs, works with sex tech companies and sex-positive brands, and is the Australian ambassador for We Vibe, an innovative company that designs and manufactures world-leading couples and solo vibrators. She runs monthly workshops, presents on a range of topics Australia-wide, and is a qualified journalist. Writes a column for GQ, amongst other titles, and has published a book on masturbation called The Pleasure Journal. I am hoping you start to understand, I guess, why there's some intimidation here. But I am so excited to talk with Georgia. She's such an amazing person, and I hope that you can reason with me and reason with Georgia to see if you can get something out of today into what we're discussing. All right, Georgia, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So we'll get straight into it. I want to know, who the hell are you and what do you do?
Oh, good question. Sometimes I ask myself that too. I am a sex coach, so I support people in learning more about their bodies and other people's. I work with individuals, couples and groups, in session and in workshops, as well as luckily my business and my work is moving online, which is sort of great to be in that position in this time, whereby I'm running online courses. I've just developed an online course for couples, but then I also have an interest in sex tech. So sex tech is any technology that is essentially used to support people in exploring or celebrating sexual wellness. My specific interest is, of course, in like the coaching aspect and how we can use sex tech to educate and support and learn more. But then also I work with brands and companies and toys, and looking at how that can integrate into experiences.
So sex tech, is that toys? Tell me what is that one? I'm getting that right? It's the toy side of things? Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
so toys is an aspect of it.
Yeah.
So sex tech is dating apps, it
Okay.
is coaching and therapy delivered by artificial intelligence, it is absolutely toys, it even extends to sex bots. So yeah, you're right in that assumption or the idea that it is toys, but it is also so much more than that too.
Great. Well, cool. I'm excited to open my mind up a little bit about that. I think I know some things, but obviously there's always new things to learn, which is awesome. I think being able to be online as well is obviously huge at the moment, definitely for me, and a big part of why this podcast is starting. So I'm glad that that's working out for you as well, and a great way for people to still access things when we're all at home, especially if you've got a partner at home, it's a lot of time to be doing exploration, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that I think the word that you use, access and accessibility around this work, I think is really important and is what excites me about what technology and what the online spaces can create. Because I work in Sydney, I run lots of workshops in the city, and not a lot of people can get to that, whether
Yeah.
that is through proximity of based on where they live, but
Yeah.
also looking at financial issues. Like not a lot of people can afford to do 10 sessions with a sex coach or a sex therapist. So finding ways that we can create products like an online course that people can take these learnings and these lessons into their home with themselves or with a partner and learn, but then really integrate it and practice it and feel the lessons and feel the inquiries together. So yeah, accessibility is a huge part of what excites me in this space.
Yeah. So I'll ask you the next question, but you can just burn through this one. But I'm really interested. So I know that you started in corporate world doing something else, and then found your way into this. So now doing the work that you're doing as a sex coach, where do you pull your strength from to do the work that you do now?
That's a really powerful question, and
Thank you.
so yeah, you can tell you're in this work, and it is challenging, and I often have people reach out to me and ask, I love what you're doing. I love the way it looks. It looks so much fun. It looks so exciting. You get so many free toys, and they want to sort of follow this path. And that's really exciting. We need lots of people in this work, and we need diversity in this work from all genders, all ability, all orientation, all color, background, all of that. And another thing that people should really consider is that when doing this work, it's sure it can look great and exciting, but it is heavy and it is hard, and we are still working in a space that there is a lot of taboo and shame and stigma. There are a lot of regulations around how I can communicate, around how I can put my work out there, and I'm working with some pretty heavy issues day to day, whether they are my clients who I can take them through a process, or whether it's people who are just sort of messaging me on Instagram, which of course I'm open to, but they're really heavy topics, and often trauma comes up, and often a lot of anxiety and stress around these issues. So I have many different ways that I cope and that I process. I'm a part of 2 supervision groups that I meet with every month. I also get therapy. I commit to receiving therapy because it is important. And even if it's me going and feeling really happy and proud and excited because I have my own business, it's even important for me to have the access to celebrate it with a therapist too. So yeah, it's not easy. It is hard, and it is consistent work for myself so that I can show up for the people that I work with.
I mean, I guess reading some of your stuff, the passion just sings through the way that you write. So I think that's probably what I pick up on is the strength that you pull from just your own drive and love for the work that you do as well. So that's really cool. And we'll get to a little bit more of that self-care side of things in a bit. So Georgia, reason with me and the audience. Why is it that doing the work that you do, how and why is that so important in terms of someone's connection with themselves and their overall well-being, and then even how mental health plays a part in all of that?
It's definitely a dynamic question, and I think this is really different for everyone. And if we're looking at sexual wellness as an umbrella, there could be many different aspects to it. So it could be the physical idea of sex, it could be the emotional, psychological, or the erotic and the sensual. So they're just obviously 4 aspects, and people may experience many, many more. But if something is, slightly out of whack in how you're feeling in your body or how you're feeling in relating to people, often I find with the people I work with, it then affects everything else. That you are working through or struggling with something in regard to your ideas of sex, then it trickles into other things and it can become quite consuming. So if that is experiencing painful sex, then it can affect your relationship, and it affects how you relate to people. It affects how you feel in your body if you're experiencing pain every time you have sex.
Okay.
As well as other elements, in that if you're discovering your sexuality and you're thinking about what you're attracted to, the kind of sex that you like or that you want to have, that's not just something that happens within sort of 20 minutes of that time that you have sex. Like, sex is a whole lived experience. And that's often the way that I like to work, in looking at, yes, sex can be seen as a physical act of naked bodies or a body coming together, but it's so much more than that. And if you can get support to guide you through or to receive information so that you can then experience a really fulfilling relationship with your body and others, it can support how you move throughout the world.
Yeah, you're right. It's such a big topic. Obviously, I think when I was looking through your work, I was like, how the hell do I pinpoint what I want to talk to Georgia about? Because there's just so many avenues. I think the avenue that picked up a lot of interest for me is I guess what you're talking about before, that shame and stigma around being intimate with yourself. And I guess I want to hear your feedback on what does that mean in an overall sense, with our connection to the self, is when we're unable to do things like that. What and you talk about a lot of the body, and obviously our body and mind are so connected. Another massive aspect of your work, which I find really fascinating. But can you talk a bit more to that side of things?
So I guess where shame comes into it is that ultimately we still live in a society and a culture where sex is shameful. So that those messages start at a really, really young age, where a young child is exploring their body, putting their fingers in their nose, pulling their hair, maybe touching their genitals because it feels good. But as soon as they're seen to be touching their genitals, someone will say, you can't touch there, you're not allowed to do that, stop doing that. So they're reprimanded from a really young age to see that that's not the right thing to do. I mean, that is just one example of the many, many, many different ways that sex is shamed and taboo. Even looking at our education system, that still teaches abstinence, it teaches do not have sex. And we know from lots of research that is not an effective way to, I mean, if their goal is to stop kids from having sex, anytime you say don't do something, they're going to want to do it because they want information about it. And we can see that from the Scandinavian models of education that do teach about pleasure, touch, gender, diversity, everything, orgasm when it comes to sex. And young people are less likely to coerce others into unwanted sex. They're less likely to be coerced. They delay having sex. They have more pleasurable sex. So the benefits of educating are so valuable, but still, because we live in shame and fear of exploring and expressing and teaching and educating about sex, it will mean that people will contract STIs and have lots of sex with lots of different people, which still isn't, and even that coming into it, sort of providing really powerful and empowering education that isn't fear mongering around STIs, because people will get STIs. They're very common. And that has a shame around it too, that I work with a lot of people that, you know, contracting herpes or having an gonorrhea or an STI of some kind is seen as something that is so awful and traumatic for lots of people. And it's also really common. So how can we rid ourselves of these stigmas and this shame and provide information so that when things do happen, we're equipped with the skills in knowing how to navigate it?
Yeah. I think I'm so mindful of our brief time we have together, but I think that's such an important and amazing topic, and hopefully opening up some of the initial thoughts for some people to explore a little bit more about that. But I know you've probably got so many thousands of stories, but do you have a story in particular where you've seen like a really amazing liberation from someone where they've, you know, found themselves in a little bit more? Is that something that you have in your little inventory of all the clients you've seen that you could share with us?
For sure. I mean, and it's kind of hard to narrow that down to one, because I mean, I guess a story or a process that I really enjoy is that when I run my workshops, say for example, I'll have 50 people coming to a workshop, and my most popular one is on pleasure for women or people with vulvas, talking about orgasm, sexuality, sexual self-confidence. And 50 people will come into the room, and there will be a heightened sense of nervousness and a little bit of stress and a little bit of anxiety, not really knowing what to say or how to relate to people around them. And then after 2 hours of sharing and learning and relating and hearing and holding space and having space held for them, it's a remarkable shift to see how easy that is to be in a space and to create a space that holds the container for that, and what it can do to change how people feel, how grounded they are, how equipped and hopefully empowered to continue exploring after. And that's why I love group learning, because sure, I can get up and I can speak about, you know, all the things that I've learned, which is useful, but we all have sexual careers, and there's so much use in learning from groups and learning from others, because it provides great diversity in how we learn and how we speak about sex.
Wow, that's so good. I think that that example it's so powerful when you can bring, not just in that one-on-one individual setting, but you can get that experience of holding the space for someone and many in that group environment. It's so cool that happens in a 50 people room, and they're anxious and excited and not sure and awkward, you know, and then you get them and there's that shift in their body and energetically, and then they, it's okay, whatever I'm doing, I feel safer. Yeah, that's so great that you can get that in a big setting. So I'll ask you one last question, and then I'll probably get some of your feedback from some other stuff, and I'll add in later. What I know you mentioned supervision being a big part, and your own therapy, and I think that every single therapist should be getting their own therapy to doing their own work, especially when we're working with vulnerable and traumatized people. There's a little bug flying around my face. But what do you do? What's your main thing that you do for self-care, and what's something that's non-negotiable for you?
I mean, I have a few non-negotiables. I move every day, so yeah, that looks like exercise, I guess. Um, I bring my awareness to my breath and grounding. I have a strong practice of embodiment, whether that is a few moments of just being conscious of my breath, or whether that is something else, if depending on the time. Um, and I try to receive as much touch as I can, and that's been pretty tough at the moment.
Yeah.
But touch is really grounding for me, and it's really comforting, and it supports me in feeling in my body. So those three things are possibly my go-to, and if I know something's a bit off, it's because I haven't had enough of one of them.
Yeah. And I think that wisdom that you have to know that is so important. Well, we might pause it there just because of our time together, but I just want to say it's been such a pleasure, and I hope that we can have another conversation and hopefully broaden up some of this discussion in my show notes page online, and I'll plug a bit of that stuff and get that from you after this, if that's okay. But yeah, honestly,
Yeah.
thank you so much. It's been such an awesome little quick influx of information. It's great.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's been so great to chat, and I'd love to come and speak to you again about a different topic if you wish.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
So that's Georgia. What an awesome quick chat I had with her, and I am definitely keen to hear more from her. So if you are also keen to hear more from her, like, hit me up. Like she said, I got to hold her to that. She's keen to get on the podcast again, and we sort of talked about a lot of broad topics with her, and there were so many gems that we could have discussed further. So what a great start to a potential amazing set of things that we can discuss. Now, what I would normally ask her is what a go-to book is, and she's given me probably her go-to book and her favorite book to read that I guess is important for her. Emily Nagoski, Come As You Are. I'm not sure if I'm saying her last name right. Emily Nagoski. That's as good as I'm gonna get it. But Come As You Are. I'm gonna put that up on the website if you're interested in reading that book, and also if you're interested in some of the stuff that George is doing at the moment, also on my website findreasontherapy.com, I've got all the access to her. She's running really cool workshops at the moment, and they're up and coming. And you can also get her on Instagram, and her Instagram name is Gspot. So she's just posted some really cool posts just recently, just on all things sex and all things education, and how you can just find such little gems out of all the things that she talks about. So again, you can get on Gspot. You can go onto her website as well, which I will link in my website. And yeah, if you want to go to one of her workshops or reach out to her, that is the easiest way. I am so stoked with today, and I can't wait to hear the next guest we have on the podcast. If you haven't checked out the other episodes, go back, subscribe, follow, like, and then email me, findreasontherapy@gmail.com, if you have any thoughts, concerns, issues, want to raise some things on the podcast, or want to hear some different stuff on this podcast, let me know. Thank you so much again for tuning in, guys, and I will see you next week. Do you want to find out more about how therapy can help you kick some goals? Go check out findreasontherapy.com.au or the Find Reason Therapy Instagram page.